The traitors in the past wanted to subjugate the country, the world, but now the traitors want to exterminate the species. The Chinese nation is facing an unprecedented crisis. Take the Ming and Qing dynasties as an example. Although there were countless traitors, the fundamental purpose of these traitors was not to destroy our race, but to follow the masters of other races to get a share of the pie. If our race is wiped out, they will have to farm, work and do business by themselves, and their so-called prosperity and wealth will not be guaranteed. Therefore, it is impossible for them to think of exterminating our race. Even if the alien master wants to do that, they will not agree. A traitor like Hong Chen-zhou wants to follow his foreign master to enjoy the glory and wealth, not to exterminate our nation. However, the current traitors want to destroy our race, and want to take a draft on our country and nation. For example, some people want to be gentle, courteous, and thrifty with foreigners. They want to be domineering at home, and they want to be domineering outside. In fact, being strong internally and externally is the standard for a strong country. These people's admiration of foreigners will only show their low personality, which is the ideological basis of traitors. Some people keep trying to introduce aliens to replace our nation. This is the so-called vacating the cage and changing the bird. In the author's opinion, national spirit and patriotism will never go out of style. The Chinese nation has thousands of years of history and is one of the ancient civilizations in the world. Why is it that among the ancient civilizations in the world, the Chinese civilization is the only one that has not been broken? The reason is simple, that is, our nation has been guarding against aliens and strengthening ourselves. We regard the inheritance of descendants as the first priority of the nation, so even if the country and the world are destroyed, our nation is still there. Even if we have been ruled by foreign races for hundreds of years, we still have the confidence to expel the Tartars and restore China. Therefore, being Chinese should be proud. How can we give up the homeland that our ancestors have passed on to us? One thing that shocked us very much is that today's traitors are different from those in the past. Those traitors in the past did it for their own self-interest, but the traitors now do it out of racial hatred and prejudice. They completely disregard the interests of the country and the nation, and only want to destroy the Chinese people and Chinese culture. This kind of bad behavior is simply extermination. Some people always listen to what foreigners say, thinking that foreigners are great and Chinese people are stupid. Therefore, we see that some people are easily deceived, and they even want to introduce aliens to replace our own nation. He is surprisingly kind to foreigners, but he has a hatred for his compatriots. There are some so-called experts, and the textbooks they concoct are full of evil tastes of xenophobia. There are even unspeakable pictures. Such textbooks are really harmful. China has a long history and splendid culture. We have always adhered to our own culture and beliefs. This is the real self-confidence and pride. It would be ridiculous if we blindly worship foreign countries as some people do. Don't we even love ourselves? These people naively think that they can become international citizens and show their love by betraying their country and nation and falling into the arms of foreigners. They slander our nation and their compatriots everywhere. Some people try their best to squeeze them internally, and then run out to live a so-called superior life. For their own selfishness, how can they care about the life and death of their compatriots? There are also some so-called experts who are still tampering with history, talking nonsense about you can't be Han, trying to fundamentally disintegrate our nation. Concocting such a book is really Sima Zhao's part, everyone knows it. There are also people who praise the traitors in history as heroes, and describe the real national heroes such as Yu Fei and Wen Tianxiang as villains, trying to shake our belief in defending our home and country. If this kind of thinking becomes the mainstream, how can our compatriots take up arms to defend our homeland when foreign races invade in the future? Such people have already infiltrated into the showbiz, literature, and art circles, and education circles, and they have strong discourse skills. They keep concocting all kinds of strange talks. Chen Hongzhu, who advocates changing thinking. The purpose of their doing this is to disintegrate our nation. Once we listen to their nonsense, it is possible to have cohesion and centripetal force, and we will no longer have the belief to defend our own homeland. When encountering a foreign enemy invasion, it can only be caught without a fight, and become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. For such a situation, we must be vigilant. In addition to creating material wealth, we must also find ways to improve culture and beliefs. If we only have material affluence but lose our culture and beliefs, are we really powerful? A person who loses confidence in his own culture and beliefs will inevitably worship foreigners. Nowadays, some scum keep concocting fallacies and heresies about the nobleness of foreigners, and countless people are fooled into treating foreigners better than their own compatriots. This is simply unbelievable. A professor's high opinion, 100,000 is not much for foreign students, alas. Another thing worth noting is the population problem. There is no reason in this world to despise oneself for being overpopulated. Some people grit their teeth with hatred when they see poor people giving birth. This is obviously brainwashed by some fallacies. If our population is reduced and our population structure is out of balance, aliens will inevitably invade. What can an aging nation do to resist it? The population is already seriously aging, but many people still don't care. Patriotism and national spirit will never go out of style. We must always stick to our own beliefs and culture, love our compatriots, respect and love each other, and help each other. Based on this, we will move towards a better future. Seeing the title, most people think of the Battle of the Huns. What we can think of through the Battle of the Huns is why, with the strength of the 6 generations of continuation, the Han dynasty developed and expanded, Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty with great talents, and many famous generals such as Wei Qing, Huo Qiubing, Li Guan, and others under his command. With such a strong national power in history. Only with the Xiongnu, whose population was 1/60th of the population of the Han dynasty, was it finally a tie. What needs to be reflected is, what determines the success or failure of a war between countries. In the Western Zhou dynasty, the Central Plains were plundered by ethnic minorities. The Quanrong clan once entered the Western Zhou city, Hejing, killed the emperor and plundered property. During the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, the state of Zhao effectively resisted the invasion of ethnic minorities. General Menyi of the state of Qin led 300,000 troops to resist in the north. And on the basis of the Great Wall of other countries such as Zhaoguo, a new Great Wall was built on a large scale, extending thousands of miles. The Great Wall and the annual precipitation of 400 milliliters are very consistent. After the Qin dynasty, because the land in the north was gradually deserting, the annual precipitation line of 400 milliliters partly moved southward. In the area with an annual precipitation of 400 milliliters and the area north of the Great Wall, the precipitation is relatively small, and it has become a natural nomadic place. The area south of the Great Wall is a farming area dominated by Han people. After the unification of the Qin dynasty, the Xiongnu also formed an unprecedented unified state. Not long after Han Jiaozi unified the world, he was trapped in Pingchen by nearly 400,000 cavalry, and finally escaped by luck. But the situation at that time was very embarrassing, and for a long period of time afterwards, the Han dynasty always treated the Huns in a humble status. When Empress Lu was in power, even in the face of Shan Yu's public insults, she did not dare to confront him rashly. For the Han dynasty, in addition to not daring to confront it openly, the regime structure at that time was not perfect, and the entire economy was not fully prepared. Faced with such a large cavalry battle of the Huns, the Chinese dynasties did not have any experience of using cavalry to fight against before Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty, and even though it happened during the unification of the Qin dynasty, both sides had nearly 1 million fighting power. However, both the offensive side and the defensive side can mobilize troops and raise supplies nearby, and the situation of both sides is very clear, which cannot be compared with the battle between the Han dynasty and the Huns. Most of the cavalry used by the Huns and ethnic minorities came and went like the wind. This allowed the entire northern border area to become a battlefront. Even though the Han dynasty was so powerful, it still made it suffer for 5 generations. However, this is also a major process of strengthening domestic military power, vigorously developing production, and establishing cavalry. If a country only has strong infantry for a long time, it is impossible to transform into a powerful cavalry power in a short period of time. The transformation of the nature of the army can involve the transformation of a series of social supporting facilities. Among them is the transformation of the most basic economic model and political model. If it is a powerful land country, it will not be difficult to build a naval country. Even if it is established successfully, it cannot last for a long time. During the period of Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty, he greatly complied with the requirements of the time and produced many outstanding soldiers. Among them are Wei Qing and Huo Qiubing, who have excellent commanding skills, Li Guan, who has very precise archery skills, and General Chen Bushi, who wins steadily on the battlefield, and so on. In addition, there is a strong cavalry unit and logistical supplies in place. The most warlike people in the world are the nomads. Since they are located north of 400 ml of precipitation for a long time, they mainly focus on animal husbandry. And because they eat meat for a long time and graze a lot, they are very strong and good at using horse tactics. But they are vulnerable to natural disasters, so they started a battle of plundering the surrounding area, and their power is unstoppable like a tiger descending a mountain. Even when the vegetation is lush, they will prepare for the sudden natural disaster and wait for the opportunity to snatch it. The war between Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty and the Xianwu lasted for decades. At that time, the economy and power of the Han Dynasty reached the largest ever, and it was the most compact and solid social structure at that time. In the end, the Xianwu, whose population was only a few tenths, ended up losing both sides. I don't know if you have noticed a phenomenon, whether it is in modern history or in the current world conflict. Once a war breaks out, our thinking will always pay attention to who fired the first shot, that is, who made the first move. This is our inertial thinking, which always assumes that the one who strikes first is at a disadvantage, so our default principle is not to fire the first shot. This thinking binds us to a certain extent. In line with the principle of not firing the first shot, we also choose to be more patient in dealing with some matters, and even worried about the escalation of the situation and did not fight back in time. But can this really resolve the conflict? For example, in 1886, when the elite warships of the Beiyang Navy of the Qing dynasty visited Nagasaki, Japan, they clashed with Japanese armed personnel and were besieged by the Japanese police and the public. In this conflict, dozens of officers and soldiers of the Beiyang Navy were killed or injured. In anger, the chief instructor of the Beiyang Navy, the British Langwilai, ordered the immediate bombardment of the city of Nagasaki. He said, "Immediate action will put the Japanese Navy in a weak position." At that time, 4 ships of the Beiyang Navy, Zhenyuan, Dinyuan, Weiyuan, and Jiyuan, were stationed at the port of Nagasaki, Japan. After Willie gave the order, the 12-inch cannon on the ship also turned its muzzle and aimed at the city of Nagasaki. The first shell was ready to be fired, but Ding Rushang did not give the order to fire immediately, and he did not get approval after asking Li Hongzhang for instructions, thus losing a great opportunity to bombard Japan's Nagasaki port. Just imagine, if the Beiyang Navy opens fire, it will inevitably severely damage the Japanese Navy in Nagasaki port, which will cause a fatal blow to the development of the Japanese Navy, and Japan will also have a huge psychological shadow on the Beiyang Navy because of World War I. According to Japan, people respect the character of the strong, and it is very likely that they would not dare to launch the subsequent Sino-Japanese War. You might think it would be unreasonable to open fire on Japan while visiting. Here I want to be honest, when the two countries are at war, they are talking about preemptive strikes. As for reason, it is not that important. After bombarding Nagasaki, the Beiyang Navy could issue a statement to Japan saying that it was a misunderstanding, or even that it was a mistaken bombing. On the other hand, Britain, Japan, and the United States don't have so many concerns about shooting a gun. Before the Opium War, it was natural for us to ban smoking, and it was based on legal principles, but the British still invaded us from far and wide. Moreover, the British Navy fired the first shot when it came over, without any worries. The same was true for Japan during the Sino-Japanese War. On July 25, 1894, Japan went to war without declaring war and attacked the 2 warships Jiyuan and Kwanji of the Qing Army in the sea off Toshima, North Korea. The Sino-Japanese War broke out. Because of the successful Japanese sneak attack, the Beiyang Navy prepared for the battle in a hurry and lost the opportunity, which to a certain extent paved the way for the defeat. The United States did a more thorough job on the issue of firing the first shot. In June 1950, just after the Korean War broke out, the U.S. military not only brazenly participated in the war, but also sent warships to block the Taiwan Strait immediately, blatantly interfering in my country's internal affairs by force. It stands to reason that the war on the Korean Peninsula was originally a matter between North Korea and South Korea. What does it have to do with us? Why does the United States block our straits and interfere in our internal affairs? But the Americans don't think so. How does it think it is beneficial to them? Just how come? From the Opium War to the Sino-Japanese War, and then to the Korean War, why did Britain, Japan, and the United States not care about firing the first shot? They also know that they are unreasonable, but they don't care about this. They only believe that the truth is within the range of the canon, as long as you win, because the winner will not be condemned. The winner is the king, the loser is the bandit. This is the truth. The best way to win is to strike first, control the enemy with one move, and wait for the opponent to hit you before you can counterattack. In terms of strategy, you will be at a disadvantage. On the issue of the first shot, Dai Su, colonel of the Chinese Air Force, saw it very thoroughly. In 2012, when the farce of purchasing islands was staged in Japan, Air Force Colonel Dai Su said, "The most typical proof of the rigid thinking of the Chinese people is the entanglement over who fired the first shot. From the entanglement at Marco Polo Bridge to the present, Japan has stationed troops in Beiping, and is still entangled in this issue. Now, Japan has passed the agreement to purchase the island. Isn't it the first shot? The first shot has to be fired from the metal barrel." From Global Network Military Channel exclusive interview with Colonel Dai Su. I think what Senior Colonel Dai Su said is very reasonable. Japan's Gaudeo is essentially the first shot at us. Don't forget that Japan was a defeated country in World War II. How dare it occupy and dispose of the territory of the victorious country? What kind of reason? Now our China is strong, but Japan is not peaceful, and it is very likely that one day in the future, we will preemptively strike us again. Looking at Japan's foreign strategy, they not only dared to fire the first shot, but also dared to make big bets. The September 18th incident, the sneak attack on Pearl Harbor in the United States, sneak attacks and declared wars are Japan's usual tricks, and we must be careful with Japan. On the issue of the first shot, we must also treat this issue flexibly. We must not solidify our thinking. When the enemy is pressing every step of the way, we must make a decisive move when it is time to make a move. We must grasp the strategic initiative and make a decisive move. Don't let yourself fall into a passive situation. There are many doctors in the world, but not many genius doctors. There are many scholars, but not many masters. There are many managers, but not many outside entrepreneurs. Whether it is practicing medicine, learning or management, they are all doing complicated things. In the face of complex problems, why are most people limited, but some people can break through the fetters and rise to another level? In addition to hard work, talent, luck, and other factors, excellent people often have unique methodologies. Recently, in his new book Structural Thinking, A Methodology for Solving Complex Problems, Professor Lu Jin of Chung Kong Graduate School of Business elaborated in detail a set of methods for solving complex problems that he has summarized in the course of nearly 30 years of business research. Effective methodology. How to quickly grasp the key information from the cluttered appearances, unravel the cocoons, and advance layer by layer until the underlying logic is found. I believe you can gain something from this book. The following is an excerpt from Structural Thinking, A Methodology for Solving Complex Problems. 01. Simple and complex problems. On the whole, the problems in the world can be divided into two categories, simple and complex. Simple questions don't require much thought, and people see a problem and can come up with a solution right away, and the result is pretty close, if not 100% correct. Simple problems are simple because the factors involved are often very limited. Complex issues involve multiple factors. The reason why complex problems are difficult to solve is first of all that people don't know which one or which factors are at work. Secondly, it is because we do not know how the factors that play a role are related, how they interact. Finally, it is because it is not known whether the stability of the system will change as the environment changes, and whether the relationship between the influencing factors will change. Simple problems require stable environmental conditions to remain simple. Instability and uncertainty complicate simple things. Just like people walking, it is extremely simple. Once you change the environment and walk on the ice, the complexity will increase greatly. If you walk on the thin ice in the middle of the lake, the complexity will further increase. If you add 7 with super strong winds and heavy snow all over the sky, it is extremely complicated. Economic and business issues are generally complex issues. In a sense, economic problems are more complicated than biological problems, because biology is the study of individuals, but economics is the study of the whole system of many people together, and the complexity is n times that of a single individual. Economic issues cannot be separated from economic theory, but in addition to economics, Other disciplines also have important guiding significance for the analysis of economic issues. For example, changes in relations with important countries, changes in social trends, such as fertility wishes, breakthroughs in science and technology, etc., will all have an important impact on the macroeconomy. Therefore, macroscopic things are complicated things. At the micro level of the enterprise, entrepreneurs will face different problems in strategy, organization, operation, finance, marketing, IT, etc. At the same time, the company's performance is also affected by external factors such as international markets, domestic policies, and industry environment. Therefore, if the company wants to have a long-term foundation and sustainable growth, it needs to find a breakthrough in this complex system and enhance its competitiveness. 02. An effective methodology. How do we deal with complex problems? If an entrepreneur cannot find the decisive factors that affect the company's value from the complex and cumbersome business environment, he will definitely not be able to run a business well. If a country cannot correctly understand the main factors that determine sustained economic growth, the strategies it adopts may lead to long-term economic stagnation or even recession. If we compare successful companies and failed companies, successful countries and failed countries, it is not difficult to see that failure is the norm and success is often the exception. Why is there more success than failure? The reason is that getting complex things right is not easy. Structural thinking is an effective methodology for solving complex problems. How to build structured thinking? First of all, structural thinking must be interdisciplinary and multidimensional. To solve real-life economic problems, structural thinking requires, on a theoretical basis, an understanding of all disciplines that have some influence on economic activity. Therefore, the first requirement for establishing structural thinking is to have a wide range of knowledge. Experts who are too specialized cannot take the leading responsibility for solving complex problems. No matter how accurate the accounting of a company is, it depends on the CFO, because he does not know the relationship between the accounting books in his hand and other financial functions. No matter how high the financial level of the CFO is, it still has a certain distance from the CEO, because he does not know the relationship between finance and other functional departments of the company. The higher the level of decision makers in the company, the wider the knowledge they need. There are so many subject knowledge, and the amount of information in each subject is extremely large. How can one person master all of them? Therefore, the second requirement for establishing structural thinking is to extract the essence and discard the dross in the process of learning each subject, keep the important and structural knowledge points, and at the same time keep the secondary and special knowledge points for get knowledge points. Why forget what you have learned? The reason is simple. The storage capacity and computing power of the human brain are limited. If we want to remember and process some things, we must free up energy by forgetting other things. If you can't forget useless things, you can't remember useful knowledge. This process is an abstract process, a process of thinning the book. China Entrepreneur Club Summit Forum. Just like economics, to a certain extent, it can be divided into macroeconomics and microeconomics. If you continue to abstract, to the most abstract level, it is actually a mathematical problem, how to pursue the maximum when resources are limited. As for what you are pursuing and what resources you have, you need to analyze the specific situation. With the structural knowledge points brought by each subject, we need to connect all these knowledge points to build a superstructure, which is also the third requirement for building structural thinking. In the process, we will find that there are actually great correlations between disciplines. For example, game theory is a basic theory of economics, but it can be widely used in many fields. It can be used to discuss the competition between parties, and it can also be used in the field of international relations to analyze the game of great powers, arms race, and other fields. It can be used in the strategic thinking of the company, and it can be used to analyze various game possibilities with competitors. Once a superstructure is established, it needs to be brought out and applied all the time. Whenever you encounter any challenge, you should take out the superstructure and go through it. There are many benefits to doing this. First, it can consolidate the freshness of the superstructure in the mind and make quick responses at all times. Second, the use of superstructure can ensure the comprehensiveness and accuracy of our viewing of problems. The third is that the superstructure we have established cannot be comprehensive or completely correct. By responding to new problems and challenges, we can discover deviations and loopholes in the superstructure and in turn correct the superstructure. This process is actually very similar to the artificial intelligence system. The algorithm of the system is initially based on past experience and knowledge, or a preliminary model is established through a large amount of experimental data, and then we take the initial algorithm to practice to test. Through practice with the data, we can improve the accuracy and stability of the algorithm, and then get it to practice for testing, infinite loop. Therefore, structural thinking requires us to have three abilities: cross-order ability, abstract ability, and organizational thinking ability. Compared with ordinary people, thinkers who have established an effective superstructure through structural thinking can often analyze complex problems quickly and comprehensively, and point out the core problems. Then, find effective new data around the core issues, and keep approaching the truth of things. A characteristic of people who master structured thinking is that their perspectives are highly forward-looking. These people don't have any special abilities, and their foresight comes from their insight into the core structure or underlying logic of things. People who have not mastered structured thinking will either have no clue or run around like flies in the face of complex problems, let alone make forward-looking predictions. For the performance of people who have mastered structural thinking, they will marvel at the speed and comprehensiveness of their analysis of problems, thinking that it must be a talent, but they don't know that the most important thing is actually the methodology. With the right anyone can build a superstructure of thought. The web anchor receives a huge reward. What kind of tricks are behind it? A few days ago, the Shanghai police cracked the country's first money laundering crime using webcast tips and arrested 21 suspects, involving nearly 100 million yuan. At a press conference held by the Shanghai Municipal Public Security Bureau on May 15, the police disclosed more details about the process of destroying this new type of money laundering crime industry chain that was parasitic on the webcast platform and laundered and transferred illegal fundraising. Fundraising scams are used for live streaming rewards. In the early stage, the Pudong branch of the Shanghai Municipal Public Security Bureau filed a case to investigate a fundraising fraud case. It was found that the criminal suspect had successively established a number of companies between January 2018 and July 2020 to transfer the income rights of new energy vehicle financing leases. In name, promise high returns to the public through offline stores, sell various wealth management products, and then raise funds illegally, and finally squander them wantonly. After the criminal suspects came to the case one after another, the police continued to promote the recovery of stolen goods, striving to recover economic losses for the people to the greatest extent. In June last year, in the process of tracing the funds involved in the case, the police discovered that a huge amount of stolen money was used to recharge and reward a certain webcast platform. Although the police have seen many criminal suspects squandering the stolen money recklessly during the handling of the case, it is rare for a huge amount of stolen money to be used to reward the anchor, which has attracted the attention of the police. Starting from this, the police sorted out and checked the details of the records of the stolen money involved in the case being used for recharge and rewards. With the deepening of the investigation, the police found that the suspect of fundraising fraud received a huge amount of money from the network anchor in his personal account shortly after recharging and rewarding the network anchor. The Shanghai Public Security Economic Investigation Department immediately set up a special case team to carry out investigations, and quickly locked 4 internet anchors including Li Mao who had suspicious behaviors such as centralized batch refunds after the event. Achieving a win-win through live streaming rewards and money laundering? Taking the network anchors as the entry point, the police followed the line and found that these anchors had close contacts with the suspects of fundraising fraud. After further careful investigation, the police successfully dug up a new type of money laundering criminal channel in which a small number of internet anchors accept tips to scrub traffic and clean up and transfer stolen money for fundraising fraud gangs. After investigation, from June 2019 to July 2020, in order to transfer and conceal criminal income, the above-mentioned criminal suspect of fundraising fraud got acquainted with the criminal suspect Li Mao and others who served as anchors on a live webcast platform, and proposed that they be in Li Mao Li and others tip gifts in the live broadcast room to increase the popularity and exposure of the live broadcast, and help them earn the top rewards of the live broadcast platform, and instigated Li and others to return the received reward money to the suspect of fundraising fraud person's personal account. After the event is completed, Li and others can also receive part of the commission as remuneration. Subsequently, Li and others, knowing that the tipping money was the proceeds of fundraising fraud crimes, collected the stolen money by accepting tipping during the live broadcast, and laundered the tipping funds through cash withdrawals, transfers, etc. As criminal suspects, people launder and transfer stolen money. Reward coins become a criminal tool for money laundering. Not only that, after further investigation by the police, it was found that since October 2020, several telecom fraud and online gambling suspects had met Fan and others who were working as employees of Lee's live broadcast studio through social software. In order to help these criminal suspects clean up and transfer criminal proceeds, Fan and others acted as intermediaries for tipping coins. Knowing that the criminal suspects' funds were obtained illegally, they bought criminal suspects at a price ranging from 40% to 30% of the original price. People use stolen money to recharge platform accounts with a large number of reward coins, and then resell the platform accounts at prices ranging from 30% to 15% off the original price, earning the difference from it, and covering up and concealing criminal proceeds for these upstream crimes. From February 8 to 9 this year, after formulating a careful arrest plan in advance, with the unified command and deployment of the Ministry of Public Security and the strong cooperation of relevant provincial and municipal public security organs, the Shanghai Police launched a centralized network collection operation in batches in 11 provinces and cities across the country. In one fell swoop, 21 suspects including Li and Fan were arrested. According to the relevant laws and regulations of the country, in order to cover up and conceal the income of crimes of disrupting financial management order and financial fraud crimes and the source and nature of the income generated, providing fund accounts, transferring funds by transfer or other payment and settlement methods, is suspected of money laundering crime. Whoever knowingly conceals, transfers, purchases, sells on behalf of, or otherwise conceals the proceeds of crime and the proceeds generated is suspected of the crime of concealing or concealing criminal proceeds. The network anchor involved in the case used the method of withdrawing cash and transferring money after accepting the reward to clean and transfer the stolen money for the upstream criminal gang, and used illegal and criminal funds to create false traffic, which seriously disrupted the order of financial management. Knowing that the reward currency is purchased with black and gray funds, the tipping currency intermediary illegally makes profits by buying low and selling high, which encourages the laundering and transfer of illegal and criminal funds, and seriously damages the healthy development of the industry. Money laundering and underground bank crimes launder and transfer stolen money for crimes such as illegal fundraising, telecom fraud, and online gambling, helping upstream criminals evade police investigation and recovery, which not only makes it more difficult to solve cases and recover stolen goods, but also encourages the breeding of upstream crimes. In this case, the Shanghai Police recovered economic losses for the people in a timely manner by cracking down on money laundering and criminal gangs of underground banks. After the case was solved, the police comprehensively analyzed the criminal methods, refined the industry risks, and notified the administrative department as soon as possible to promote source governance. At present, with the approval of the Procuratorate, 4 criminal suspects including Li have been arrested by the police in accordance with the law on suspicion of money laundering, and 17 suspects including Fan have been taken criminal compulsory measures in accordance with the law on suspicion of covering up and concealing criminal proceeds. In the next step, the police will continue to dig deep into upstream crimes and strive to crack down on the whole chain.